An array is a sequence of instructions that are executed as long as a certain condition is matched. And in this video, I'll be covering 5 most used loops in JavaScript. Those are the for loop, the while loop, the do while loop, the for of loop, and the for in loop. So here we have an array of numbers from 1 to 6. And if we try to do something here, I'll say console.log this array length, okay? So if I try to log that in my console and I refresh, oh, I have to open up my console. All right, you see 6, okay? That because the array, the length of this array is 6. So here I'm going to use the for loop to start, and I'll say for, and here we have to have an initial state, and I'll say let I, this is let I equals 0. I put a semicolon, I put my condition, and my condition is going to be I is less than array length, okay? Array.length. That means I is going to be less than 6. Because remember we had logged that into the console. Let me remove this line. And I'll say, and now here I'm going to put what is going to be executed, alright? And I'll say I plus plus. I would like to increment the I. So here we are going to have the initial state. I is going to be 0 by default. So the condition is going to be I is less than array length. That means we are going to do something as long as this I is less than the length of the array. In this case, as long as I is less than 6, alright? So we have I plus plus. That means as long as I is less than 6, we would like to increment I. That means for the first time, I is equal to 0. For the second time, when I is 1, we would like to increment it. And here it's going to be 1, right? So we go 0, we increment it to 1. When I is 1, we would like to increment so that it becomes 2 the next time that loop executes. When I is 2, we would like it to be 3 as the next time the loop executes, until we reach where I is going to be equal to the array length, because there our condition is not going to be matched, and that means the execution will stop. So I'd like to say if that condition is matched, we would like to say console log the element that is at that position, right? The position of I. So for the first time, I is going to be 0. That means for the first time we log this element because it's the one at position 0. For the second time we log this. For the third time, until we reach this last element. So we give that a try. I refresh here. Alright, you see 1, 2 up to 6. Okay, that means after reaching this one, that is at index 5, the execution stops, because when you reach index 6, that means I is no longer less than array length but is now equal to array length, and there the execution stops. So there is a scenario. What if we say this, let me say this is less or equal to array length? What is going to happen? That means we are going to have I equals 6, but there is no element at index 6 in our array. What is going to happen in that case? So let me give that a try. I refresh. You see at the end here we see undefined, right? But we don't want to see that undefined, okay? That one, you have to have some mindful conditions so that you don't get those types of error or getting undefined and so on. So here, that way we say when I is strictly less than array length, we log that to the console. If you refresh here, we still get up to 6. There are some cases where our condition can rerun infinitely, and sometimes we don't want that in our code because it can break the whole code. So let me give you an example of a code or a for loop that will rerun infinitely. So here I'm going to say for. I'm going to say for let let I equal 0 like this, and if I say I is less than 1, okay, in this way, and I'll say just do the following, decrease I. So in that case, I will never be, in that case, I will never be greater than 1, right? So I'm going to say in this case, just console log I. So now this I will run infinitely, because as long as I decrease I, we're going to get -1, -2, and this code will still be valid, alright? This condition will still be valid. So the code will re-execute infinitely. So if I give that a try, okay, they say I is not defined, and that is because this is let I like this. So I refresh. You see, the code is re-executing infinitely. You see, and we don't want that. But I can add an if statement here, right? So if I'm going to say if I, maybe I'm going to say if I is equal to 10, I would like to break, okay? And this break statement means when I is equal to 10, okay, or let me say I is greater than -10, okay, I is great, oh, this is not supposed to be like that. I'm going to say if I is equal to -10, I would like to break, okay? I don't want to go beyond that. So you're going to have -1, -2, but when it reaches -10, the code should break there. That means this will go out of this block of code and it will not execute infinitely. So I refresh here, I give this a try. Now, as you can see, our code is, our logging to the console is stopping at -1, because when it reaches -10, it just breaks, and that execution, where is it? This execution stops. We go out of this loop, all right? Those are the types of statement that you can add to your code to avoid that your code reruns infinitely and then breaks your entire application. So if you want to stop at some point or at some position, you can add an if statement and a break. Basically, you can add a break without even an if statement. You can just add a break at some point so that your execution code stops when that condition is matched, right? So this way we can avoid our application to break. So there are other cases where you don't want to break your application, but you want to skip something, all right? So I'm going to leave that break there, but before I will add another if statement. And basically I'm going to output only the numbers that are divisible by 2, all right? So here I'm going to say if I, and there is this modulus 2 is equal to 0, that means that number can be divided by 2. So if that number, or instead of saying I'm going to say if this modulus is different from 0, that means it's going to be an odd number instead of an even number, right? So in this case, I'm going to say console log, I'm going to say console.log I, okay? So I'm going to remove this one. Here, the purpose of this code is to maybe, okay, let me move that down here. And the purpose of this code is saying we would like to output only the numbers that are that are divisible by 2, right? So if that number is not divisible by 2, we want to skip that. And when you're using the for loops, you can say, oh, maybe there is a statement similar to the break statement, but that is the continue, okay? And that says if you see the modulus of a number is different from 0, you continue. Don't do anything, just continue to the next number, right? So this statement should output only numbers that are divided by 2, all right? So if we give this a try and I refresh here, you see them: 0, -2, -4, -6, -8, and it's stopping at -8 because we have another if statement that breaks the whole for loop when I is equal to -10. But here you got the continue statement that says if this condition is matched, don't do anything, just pass to the next number in the row or to the next execution. All right, hope you get it. So now it's time to talk about the while loop. So basically the while loop and the for loop work, I can say they do the same work and they are pretty similar. So let me just change this code to a while. Okay, so here all you can say is while. You just put the while, and I'm going to say while let's let the statement stay like that. I'm going to say, let me change it a bit, and I'm going to say let I is equal to 0, like this. And here I'm going to say while the I is less than 1, just let me do this. I'm going to say while this is less than 1, do something. So if you give this a try, you see now here this is it's outputting that 0 many times. Why is that happening? That is because we are saying while that I is less than 1, console log I. Okay, but now we are not decrementing anything. Okay, so let's add some code to decrement also. So here, to avoid that infinite loop, because this I is being less than 0 all the time, that's why we are seeing that. But now all I'm going to say is while I is less than 1, I'm going to say I decrement the I do it like that, and that should stop that infinite loop. So right here you still see the same behavior, right? And that's how we change that while loop. From the for loop to the while loop, it's still the same, but here you see I'm saying while this condition is matched, while that I is less than 1, and the I we are talking about is defined up here, we have said let it be 0. So while that I is less than 1, we are going to keep decreasing that. Okay, then when you're decreasing, you have to first check these conditions, and that's why we are seeing the same result as in the for loop. Okay, and guys, this is still, all the break and the continue statement are still the same in this loop. That's why we didn't change anything down here, and we still got the same result. All right, so maybe if I say here I will increment. Okay, so I'm going to say let I equal 0, and while I is less, let me say while I is less than 10, I would like to increment that and still check these two conditions. I refresh. Okay, you still see the same result of all those numbers that are divided by 2, and that 10 is still okay. Let me show you that. You see, say the I is strictly less than 10, but now here this condition, we don't want this condition, right? This condition is useless right here. And guys, that basically how the while loop and the for loop work. They are all still the same, only that the statement change and the way that how we do them, how we position them change, but it still does the same thing or the same work. All right, so the third loop we are going to talk about is the for in loop, let's start with the do while, right? Do while loop, because we have the loop here, and here that statement we can still change it to this. So let's change this while loop to the do while loop. All I'm going to do, and this is really funny, I'm going to put this down here, and now right here I'm going to say do this, okay, do like this. And now, I mean, the do while and the while loop are strictly, according to me, they're still the same, because you are saying do this while I is less than 10. And for the while loop, you just say while I is less than 10, execute this function. And if we give this a try, you still see the same result, right? And that because this do while is pretty the same as the while loop. So here we are saying do this, execute this while I is less than 10, all right? And that is pretty easy, I guess. So without wasting time, let's jump into the next loop, and that is going to be the for of loop, all right? Now for the for loop, we are going to for the for of loop, we are going to change this a little bit, and we are going to use this array. And here I'm going to say for x, or for element of array, we are going to do something. So why is this called a for of loop? And that is because we have the for key here and of. That means this loop is going to go through that entire element, and in that entire array, and for each element of that array we are going to do something, right? And let's keep it simple and say console log element, okay? So now we should expect to see each element logged in the console one by one. So if we refresh this, you see the element. So you can go a little bit fun, say you'd like to log element times 2. So you're going to see 2, 4, 6, and so on. I refresh, you see them right here, 2, 4, 6, and so on. And we can pretty do that for a string, for an array. And let me do that for a string. And I'm going to just put my name here, and I'll say for each element of that, and now this is no longer an array, is a string. Okay, so I'm going to say for element of string, do element times 2. Okay, so now this is going to log each letter times 2. We're going to have E, and so on. So I refresh, you see it says not a number, and this is because we are logging letters. We are trying to multiply letters times 2. Okay, so I'm going to say here element plus hello. Okay, so you're going to see M hello, E hello, and so on. And this is only to show you that it works, right? You see M hello, E hello, R hello, and these are MRDI, Muddy, all right? And that means this is going through each element of a particular array or a particular string, and it does something for each element of that string. Okay, hope you got it. So the last loop I'm going to talk about is the for in loop. Okay, and this basically iterates through all the property of an object and does something according to what you specify in your code or in your for loop. So I'm going to change this string, and I'm going to say maybe I would like to change it to an object, and I'll say name Mary, and this is supposed to be like this. This is going to be the name, and we'll have the age. We'll have the age here, let's say 19. You're going to have, I don't know, I can add, okay, I'm just add sex, and this is going to be const person, okay, person. And now to use the for in loop, we are going to change the off into the in, so you're going to be for in, okay. And here I'm going to say from for prop instead of element, and you can name that however you want. For prop in, this is not in string but in person. Okay, and I'll start by logging prop into my console. Okay, let me just try to log prop so that we see what is coming from there. So if I refresh, you see m is not defined, and that is because this is supposed to be like this inside of quotation marks. So I refresh. Okay, now you see name, age, and sex. Okay, because those are the properties that are here. Because remember, I said the for in loop iterates in the elements and gets all the properties that are there. So we get this property, and the last property. But at this point, we are not getting the values. Okay, so now what if you want to get the property and the value? How can you do that? Let me quickly show you. To do that is easy and straightforward. I'm going to put here backticks because I would like to add things dynamically. So here I'm going to say props. Okay, and now I say here what I'm going to say is to take that person, okay, this person right here, and check the value at a certain property, right? Because objects are named index while arrays are numbered index. So here, if you put the prop that you get, so in this case, let me say you put this name, you say property name, because this is the prop or the property name, you're going to get Muddy, right? So now here, all we expect is to get name, Muddy, age 19, and 6M. So if I refresh this, boom, you see it appears right here. Okay, guys. So I think that's basically it for this video. Let me quickly talk in brief about those 5 loops so that you get them again. We have the for loop, the while loop, the do while loop, the for in loop, and the for of loop. And basically, the for loop and the while loop are the same because they do something whenever a certain condition is matched, or as long as a certain condition is matched. Now the do while loop, it's basically the same with the while loop, only that they add a do and a while, but it's pretty the same thing. We have the for in loop, that loops it's a loop that loops through an entire array or a string and does something for each element of that array or for that string. And now we have the for in loop that iterates over an object and returns the property inside that object. All right, so you can pretty do anything you want with those properties. The way we did them, we output the property and the value, but you can change it according to your needs or according to what you're developing. So guys, again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.